So I like the idea of like serving in a brotherhood, you know. So when I went to the Army recruiter and I told him I wanted to blow shit up and shoot people in the face, he's like, well, are you afraid of heights? I got the job for you. Showed me the Ranger video, and I said, yeah, that's it. But like, get me out of here now. So went into the Army, you know, as one station unit training at Fort Benning, you know, did airborne school, did RIP. And the more that I kind of engaged in it and that negative reinforcement atmosphere, the more I loved it. You know what I mean? Like, you tell me I can't do something, I'm going to show you that I can, right? And that's one of the things in the military that people don't really understand, is like, the more you tell somebody that they can't do something, they can't overcome odds, the more you kind of rise to the occasion. And every time you rise to the occasion, you push yourself more and more and more, and you're like, I'm capable of anything, right? And then so I was a Ranger in the 90s, like 94 to 98. You know, I went in at like 17 days after Mogadishu, I entered service. And then I end up at 3rd Ranger Battalion, where, you know, all the Rangers from Mogadishu were. I go to Alcatraz, which is Alpha Company back then. They called it Alcatraz. I remember sitting in the PAC office. They were like, who wants to go to Alcatraz? I was the only dude that raised my hand, right? But 13 of us went there. And by the next day, I think there were 5 of us left. You know, because dudes that had already passed RIP in that one night of introduction to like your platoons and your company, you know, like a bunch of guys quit. They're like,
really?
Oh yeah, dude. Like, it didn't stop at RIP.
They got their tan berets and quit, right?
Well, it wasn't tan back then. We had the black berets. That's back when the black was the standard, and then that Shazinski guy fucked it all up for everybody. But like, everybody's special. No, they're not. You know what I mean? But yeah, so like that first night was it was like an intro to, like, there was a lot of hazing back then. You know, you're up all night, you know, doing whatever, but there were only 5 guys left. And then I did my 4 years there, and I was like hard charging. I thought it was going to be a lifer, you know, but I'm also one of those guys that asks a lot of questions. And in the Ranger Battalion back then, it wasn't okay to be the guy that's always questioning authority, always questioning, you know, things. And we worked with PJs, and you know, we were always spinning up for a mission, like the Haiti thing, or getting recalled for something, and you're like, okay, we're gonna launch, we're gonna go do combat, we're gonna go, you know, get into the mix, which is what I wanted. And it always spun back down. And then working with the PJs, and again, I knew a little bit about it from like my prior to going into the Army. You know, I was like, these guys smell like soap. You know what I mean? They're not sleeping in the dirt for absolutely no reason. Not to say it was no reason, but back then, like, I mean, come on, you're marching from range to range to range. You can see the barracks, but you're freaking like sleeping in the dirt. There was a lot of stuff that, like, I was like, this is not good for, you know, overall training objectives. You know what I mean? And in my opinion, again, but so I was looking at the PJs. I didn't really know anything about the NDOC or the selection process or anything like that. I was like, hotel rooms, rental cars, Air Force bases, you know, Air Force chow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they also were getting hazardous duty allowance pay. They were getting free fall qualified. They were scuba qualified. You know, they had these advanced quals, and I was like, okay, these guys are stepping right into a pipeline where they get all these schools and they come out as fully capable operators. You know, I thought that, you know, because you were always jockeying with like another Ranger for like, you know, a slot to go to Ranger school or to go to SEER school or something like that. And it was merit-based, which is great, but at the same time, if you weren't there for 13 years, you never could have got all the quals that I got coming out of the pipeline. So I left the military in 98. I did 3 months of like civilian knock around, getting laid off of jobs, construction, driving dump trucks, and then I decided to go back into the Air Force. I'm like, I'm going to do the Air Force thing, and I went and saw the recruiter. I lost a pay grade coming across, which sucked, but I think it was worth it in the long run.
What were you at coming out?
I was at E5 coming out after 4 years in the Army. E5 coming out, and then they knocked me back to E4 and, you know, whatever. And then I went to, you know, the Air Force recruiter, and I was a 2-pack a day cigarette smoker. I still smoke cigarettes every now and again, but probably the only PJ that ever smoked cigarettes consistently, like through my entire career.
Because they're runners, right? I mean, PJs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, supposedly, you know what I mean.
That's
but
the aura about it. Almost like a SF dive team.
Yeah.
Those guys are like the super fit guys.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're gonna go to the dive team and you're gonna be underwater, you're gonna be the super fit guy. Your team's gonna be running. You're not gonna be the biggest team in the company. You're going to be the runners, super fit, because oxygen usage and all that.
Right. And I mean, I don't know how I did it. I know that when I showed up at the end dock, I was like smoking a cigarette. I'm like, I guess I got to go do some water shit now. But like through the end dock, I actually quit smoking, no dip, stuff like that. And I think physically, the Air Force indoctrination, the physical standard that you had to achieve every day was above and beyond what I was expecting. Like we started with probably 120 guys, graduated 18.
Ooh, really?
And then of those 18, we even lost some throughout the pipeline. Like of those 18, maybe 14 of them actually became PJs.